go ahead and look pretty. Thank you, thank you. So hello, everybody. It is January 27th, and it is our Twilight session tonight. I am your host, Dani Betancourt, your success coach for the Manteca Modesto Market Centers. So tonight, I kind of wanted to dive in a little bit deeper of what we talked about briefly on our Wednesday productivity coaching, because this is a very common feature, common thing that is happening in our market right now. And as Sandy can attest to, well, the contract that she had just gotten into, we are seeing that a lot of sellers, knowing that it's a seller's market and they have the upper hand to kind of dictate a little bit of the terms, right? But at the same time, we still need to make sure that it's a win-win for both sides, both the seller and the buyer. And what we are seeing is we are seeing that a lot of sales are contingent on the sellers finding replacement properties. And we are also seeing that the sellers are wanting what is called a seller in possession. And when it's free of charge, that is more to a benefit to the seller, right? So seller in possession, what does that mean? Now, typically, your normal close of escrow time frame is typically about a 30-day time frame. Now, a lot of times we will shorten those time frames to be a little bit more of an aggressive offer, or we may have to extend it to a 45-day or longer, depending on what the seller's needs are or the buyers, right? So with that being said, every instance is always going to be different. So that's the one thing that is consistent in real estate, is that it is inconsistent, that it is always, everything is going to be case by case. And that's why it's very important that when you guys go to write offers, we're paying very close attention to those remarks that are in the MLS, right? And why we want to pay close attention to those is because that is what is going to help prevent counter offers from going back and forth. So when we see up and in front on the MLS that a seller is requesting for a rent back, what you always want to do is pick up the phone and have a conversation with that listing agent. And you should be doing that at all times. Anytime that you are going to be submitting an offer, you should always start to establish a great relationship, because 9 times out of 10, you have communication established in that relationship, your offer is going to be more likely to be considered and more acceptable because you're having that open communication to begin with. So when you go to put an offer on a home, the first thing you guys should be doing is pulling up the MLS and looking at those confidential agent remarks. And when you see that a seller is needing rent back, right, you should be picking up the phone and calling the agent. And I always like to say, hey, Sandy, I see that you have a listing over at 123 Main Street. I'm seeing here that the seller needs a rent back. Not a problem. How much of a time frame would the seller actually be needing? And at the same time, what are other seller needs that we need to take into consideration to make our offer the winning offer, right? Because what that does is that opens it up from the very beginning, that let's have a conversation and let's make the offer that we are submitting the most cleanest up front to prohibit from them having to send us a counter offer. Because if they have to send me a counter offer, that's going to take more time. And that's actually going to allow for people to be able to come in with other offers. So now I've got competition, right? And we want to try to alleviate that competition. Our job as your success coaches is to make your offers the most competitive, the most aggressive, and a win-win for both sides. So in order to be able to do that, I apologize, guys. Let me put my phone on mute right now. I apologize. So in order to do that, that's why we have to pay very, very close attention to those confidential agent remarks. So how many of you, go ahead by a show of hands, put this on mute. How many of you have actually written offers this year? All right, Krista, Sandy. That's it? so far.
Well, it's still just January.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Okay. So the reason why I'm asking this, guys, is because all of you know that we have a new RPA out there, right?
Yep.
And I'm going to hopefully assume that all of you have gone through the new RPA courses, and all of you have actually taken the time to read your contracts and go through those, right? All right. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, and now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, is because in our new RPA, and everybody see my screen okay?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, we see everything.
Okay. So what I highly suggest that you guys do, if you are not familiar yet with filling out this RPA, get familiar with it. Print one out, read it, be familiar with it, because our market is still moving very fast, right? We need to be able to write offers quickly. We need to make sure that we're writing them correctly. And we need to make sure that at the same time, we know exactly what we are filling out. So as I'm showing you the RPA, everyone's familiar with these normal forms. None of those had changed, right? Wire fraud. All right. Now we are looking at our RPA. So when we go to fill out the RPA, we need to make it clear the type of terms that we are always going through. So I know a lot of you may have just gone through boot camp and had covered the RPA. So tonight I really want to focus more on the possession and what does that mean? So in the time of possession, you can either, what is most ideal is that the home is vacant and that we get to take possession the moment that it goes on record, okay? Now, what does that mean on record? That means that the lender has funded the loan and the title company has released to the county recorder's office okay to record that the buyer has brought in all their funds and that it balances the transaction, and the recording office will then state that the file has been officially on record with county recording. Once that is on record and you are now listed, the buyers are now listed as the owner of record, is when you can physically handle keys over, okay? Now, there may be times where it will fund late in the day, and it could be a Friday, and the buyers say, oh, we didn't go on record, but it's going to record first thing Monday morning. I'm going to ask you guys, is it okay for the buyers to go ahead and start to move some of their stuff into the garage?
No.
No.
Ah, very good. Who could tell me why?
Liabilities.
They don't own it yet. It's not theirs yet.
Record it. They don't own it
Liabilities.
yet.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Heaven forbid they start to put things inside the garage, or if the home has a shop, right? And they say, well, it's just in the garage, it's not in there. And heaven forbid that something happens, the home gets broken into, a fire happens, right? All of their possessions, everything are gone, and they have absolutely no recourse whatsoever because they were not the owners of record. So it is extremely important that this time of possession is upon notice of recording. We never hand keys over prior to that. Now, I always like to, because we usually know that if it's not recorded by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's going to roll over to the next business day. So I always like to just put on there notice of recording if the home is vacant. If the home is not vacant, then that's the conversation you have up front with the seller's agent, right? Maybe they don't need a rent back, but yet they need till the end of the day to be able to finish getting all of their stuff out. So you can literally just check this box and keep it to 6 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whichever needs to be, okay? But it's very important to always make those little differences on your contract so it's easy for the seller to go, oh, they're willing to work with us, okay? Now, occupied or vacant unit. This is very, very important. What does this mean? Close of escrow date, if checked. Now, the difference between an SIP for 29 days or the difference between an RLAS. Besides Krista and besides Sandy, who can tell me what is the number that is dictating the difference between that?
17 days.
29 or 30.
Mhm.
28 or 29.
29 or 30. I'd say.
29 or fewer is a SIP, and anything
Mhm.
more than that is the RLAS, because then
Correct.
they become a tenant.
That perfect, Raina. That is absolutely perfect. So the reason why I bring this up to the point is because if you can stay away from hitting that 30-day mark, it is more beneficial. Why? Because the less liability to your buyer that they are no longer going to be, they're just providing occupancy for 29 days or less. Or if it goes 30 or more, they are now landlords, which means that we need to enter into tenancy agreements, which could open up a can of worms. So it's very important that you always know, can we keep it at 29 days and less moving forward with the seller in possession? This is very, very important when you mark these here, okay, that you're dictating that this is 29 days, all right? Anybody have any questions in regards to the difference between a seller in possession or a tenancy agreement? No. Okay, very
Are
good.
there any additional forms that if it did go into the RLAS that
Yeah.
you would need to provide?
Absolutely. Quite a few, Rita, quite a
Mhm.
few.
It'll
Because
prompt it.
yes, it will prompt it. And so what it does is it literally goes from literally just a rent back into a tenancy agreement. So now you are a landlord, or the buyer is a landlord of the property. So now you have several other forms that will be incorporated, right?
And that means, Dani, if let's say the seller who is now your tenant, they decide, well, we're not going to move, then you have to go through a whole process to get them out, right? Which is why those other
Yes.
forms, yeah.
Yeah, because you actually signed a tenancy agreement. And so now you are a landlord. So at that point, now you've agreed that they have tenancy rights, which could mean that you, if they refuse to leave, you're getting into evictions,
Eviction, yeah. Okay.
right? So
Right.
that's what I mean by opening up a whole nother can of worms. Now, why is this important when you're representing your buyers? And when you're writing these offers and you're having these conversations up front?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why it's important to them. Number one, if it's for free, that's, you know, they're allowing someone to stay in their home technically for, you know, no fees at all. And they're going to be delayed being able to go into their home. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as we know that most of our buyers are buying homes for primary residences, right?
Right.
Mhm.
So what does that mean to a lender? They are funding a home that they are solidifying their equity on, that you are stating you are going to be the primary resident on. A lender at any time can audit that. Because if it's a secondary primary, it's a secondary residence, they should be charging a whole nother interest rate. It's a whole nother structure of a loan, right? So a lender could come back and say, hey, it's been 3 months and you're not occupying your home. Now you're a landlord. Now that's a tenant occupied home. That's not how your loan was funded. So it has a spiral effect. So it's very important to understand that. Now, on the flip side, let's say that your buyer has to be in the home within a certain amount of time, right? So knowing that a seller needs a 45 or a 60-day rent back, how is that going to affect the buyer? What if they're being kicked out of their home and they have to be in the new home? So all of these are very, very important. Okay, thank you, Melissa. All of these are very, very important to know prior to entering into a contract, because our job is to always have our clients' fiduciary interest always at the forefront.
You
Always.
said 3 to 4 months. Why would anyone want to do that anyway? I mean, why would the buyer agree to that? That's a long
Well,
time.
That is a very long time, but
They're
let me ask
paying-
you this.
They're paying their mortgage and they're paying where they're at currently. They're having to
That's
pay
right.
double for that.
That's absolutely right. But let me ask you, Sandy, if I was a buyer and I had been on a home search for over a year and I found just that house that I had to have, you may agree to it,
Maybe, yeah.
right? And so every situation is different. Every situation in real estate is unique. So that's why I cannot ever emphasize so much that knowing these terms up front is how you are going to line yourself up with winning offers. This is how it's not always about the highest price, guys. It's always the price and terms. And when you know these up front is what is going to make it the most competitive. So I know, for example, when you guys send me your contracts to review, and I'm like, okay, guys, I got to pull up MLS. Let me get to my computer. And you're like, oh, no, I looked at MLS. That's the stuff that I'm looking at to make sure that we're protecting your clients and the interest of it. Because maybe I'm going to see something that you're not going to see, right? So I want to share something with you guys. I'm going to go back to my car forms. Okay. And we're going to go back into forms. And let Melissa in. Okay. So I'm going to teach you guys a little something because I'm a stickler. As you all know, I was a finance director for automotive dealership. So I'm a very stickler about contracts being complete and filled out completely. So this is the seller license to remain in possession. This is what you incorporate the moment that you click that box on your RPA of 29 days or less. Okay. So when we fill this out, it is either going to be part of your purchase agreement or it's going to be part of your counteroffer, right? But if we know the terms up front, go ahead, Audrey.
So it'll come up automatically if you
Yes.
put in the correct date?
So the moment on the RPA that you click the possession and the 29-day SIP, the SIP form will pull into your transaction, okay? But you still have to go into the form to fill it out.
Okay.
Okay. Now, as I mentioned, I'm a big stickler. I don't like blanks, especially when it talks about money, especially when it talks about terms and it's tying into your contract. Okay. And a lot of people don't know how to do this. So I'm going to teach you a simple thing of how not to have blanks on here. So for example, if I'm writing a SIP, because I called my listing agent and I said, hey, they need only 29 days. Great. The buyer's willing to give them 29 days free of charge because that's the norm right now. Now, if it was in a buyer's market, it'd be a totally different conversation, right? 2 years ago, we were charging a per diem. Oh yeah. We were charging hey, you want to stay in that home? You have to pay X amount of dollars every day that they would agree upon. But right now, being the market it is, it's usually free of charge to the seller. Go ahead, Sandy.
Question. So let's say you have this and it's 29 days, but the seller actually moves out 2 weeks in advance. What happens then? I mean, because they don't actually, the buyer doesn't actually take possession till the end of that 29, or is that releasing the contingency?
That is, it's actually, let me correct that, this is not a contingent. This is not contingent. This is
Okay.
a additional term that is being added to the contract. Okay.
Okay.
So if they vacate early, that's great news. You can give the keys.
But is there additional paperwork for it or no?
No,
Mhm.
Okay, okay,
no, but that's a great question. Absolutely. Great question. But I want you to understand the difference between not being a contingent, that this
yeah,
is a term, right?
yeah,
Okay.
I do, yeah.
So we had bought our home at 123
I have a
Mitch.
question.
Yeah, go right ahead, you guys.
So, say Sandy's situation happened, right? You know, seller moves out 2 weeks earlier than their original stated SIP. On the terms of the SIP, say it was annotated that you know, it's free of charge. Well, the bills for that, you know, are also included. So would the seller be paying up to the annotated, you know, say it was 29 days, or would they only pay up to that 2 week mark that they lived there for?
They would pay up until the time. And so that is actually addressed right here, utilities. So that's addressed inside the SIP, that the seller to pay for all utilities and the following charges. Now, once they vacate, they're no longer going to be responsible for that, right?
Mhm.
But
So they cannot come back and say, well, they signed the contract that said that they were paying for the utilities until this date.
no, I mean, your buyers, the moment that they get keys, they should have utilities in their name right then and there. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
I guess I'm asking the question because I've had funky situations where it got really petty in regards to the utilities. Really petty.
Okay, so do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
So like there was I guess I think it was like 21 days we did SIP for, and I think they ended up closing earlier than the initial date, which I guess what the buyer's agent was considering day zero and what I was considering day zero or day one, they were different. So we had to come to an agreement like, no, this is what it is. So we kind of went back and forth. And then, well, then after we closed, we agreed on that date. Like, so we're on this date, we're going to be exchanging keys. Would that date happen? Well, months later, or however, whenever their utilities came in, because it doesn't happen right on the spot. I guess the seller tried to change out their name on the utilities, but or should I say, sorry, the buyer changed out the name on the utilities early, and so they were it's kind of confusing. The seller that was moving out was still living there and was using the utilities in the buyer's name, but
Yep.
it was not the fault of the seller. The buyer did that. And so
Yeah.
then they came back and said, well, technically the breakdown of this is this date and this is what the county says. It was really petty because just like they weren't reading the contract, they also did not read the utility bill that broke down things in specific days. And it was really like funky the way that the utility services did it.
Yeah, so that's there's two parts to that, Raina, because when you enter into these possession agreements and at any point that you ever decide to close escrow early, that has a trickle effect to everything, right? So it's bottom line, the reason why you have to know these forms in detail is because it's black and white. It's either one or the other. There is no gray, right? So if it states seller is granted to remain in possession for 29 days after the close of escrow, not 29 days from the day that you were intentionally to close escrow. It is the day you close escrow. So if it ends up closing early because the buyer's excited and the lender's like, hey, let's close it out for the month end and let's hurry and push this through for the month and close a few days early, well, that starts the clock right then and there. So that's another reason why when some people on either side try to close a transaction early, it's not as simple, yeah, we can close early. It's what is everybody able and on the timeline? Because if they cannot be out in that 29 days early also, then we've now started a clock that we can't fulfill, right? And now we entered into a tenancy. That
Right.
kind of makes sense. So anytime, you know, when you have a occupied home, closing early can have a larger trickle effect into that, especially when it comes into the utilities. The buyer should have not have transferred utilities. And this
Exactly.
is why we say so much that this is why I wanted to touch on this tonight, because I'm seeing this a lot in a lot of the offers that I'm reviewing for you guys. And it's very important to me that you understand what the trickle effects could be if you close early or if you close late, and how that could affect after that time, right? And even when us as agents, knowing that, hey, we closed escrow, woohoo, I got my check, right? But yet you've got a buyer who still is not possession of the keys. The transaction is not over for us as agents. We are still on a day-to-day with those buyers and with that listing agent to make sure that the seller is on track to get out within the time as specified, right? So that's another reason why we have to pay attention to our timelines and always educating and guiding our clients that, no, this is exactly what's happening. I've talked to the listing agent. This is what the sellers are doing. This is how I advise you to do your utilities and everything to prevent those type of situations. Absolutely.
But I would think that if they do go out early, just real quick, if they do go out early, there should be a document updating that, saying that, you know, I'm giving you possession of the home now, here's the keys. Otherwise, what's to stop them from coming back the following weekend?
Well, you can do an additional VP, right? A verification of property. You most definitely can, to state that, you know, because here's the main thing is that home still needs, whether it's a seller in possession afterwards, that home still needs to remain in the same condition as when you very first put that offer in, right? So that VP should be filled out. And I always recommend that when it's a seller in possession, you fill them out before the close of escrow. And, you know, there's an additional that you're doing when you're handing over the keys.
Okay.
Especially if there's anything that changed in that home during that time.
Okay. So that's the document that kind of confirms. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then,
Thank you.
are we adding that VP to opportunities?
Absolutely.
And then say if for whatsoever reason the buyer is not satisfied with the condition of the property on that second VP, where does it go then?
Court.
Yeah, it's gonna go to mitigate. If you cannot come to a win-win, now let's say that all of a sudden there's a huge hole in the wall from the sellers moving out, and the seller does not agree to deliver the home in the same condition as to when you had originally put the offer in and agreed to these terms, then it's gonna have to go, you're gonna have to reach out to Car Legal. Absolutely. I mean, always reach out to our broker first, but you know, it may have to go to that extent, you know, and that's why it is so important that when you're not handing over keys at the close of escrow, you are in constant contact with that listing agent to make sure that your client's property is still being maintained. The grass is still being cut. It's still, they can't, you deliver a home and then all of a sudden for 30 days, they say, I'm not going to fix one. I'm not going to do this. Okay, well, that's not how we bought the home. And that's why this is so important. Absolutely.
So could you have them put a deposit down on it if they're supposed to be there for 30 days?
So great question. Great question. Now, here's the thing is that escrow companies typically will not hold a deposit in escrow. You can ask them to put a deposit down, but escrow companies cannot hold deposits in there. They cannot hold money back from a seller's proceeds.
Could you,
What about when the seller closes the deal out of his part of his sale, he puts the deposit back out of a personal account?
Well,
Dani?
Yeah, go ahead, Bana.
Yeah, I just want to mention I've been in transaction before, and for some reason the buyer agent, she was very, I don't know, out of nowhere. She came to me and she said that they want to hold in the escrow $300 because they asked for repair. And that was very short period where we are going to close escrow and we have to close. So she called me, either we cannot close or you guys have to keep money in the escrow. And that's what's happened. We closed escrow and we kept $300 to be released after they finished the repairs.
So
That's
So
for a
it
repair, not a
depends
deposit,
for
right?
repairs, that is a little different for repairs because of the fact that most of the time the escrow will hold the money and pay the vendor directly. It just depends on the escrow company too.
Yeah, maybe it depends on the escrow company, but yeah, that was very,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and so it'll be a little different situation, like if they're going to pay for repairs and if the proceeds are going to a vendor, where versus they've closed escrow and they're just holding on to money and to re-released, because the only reason why I say this is because I have in my transaction where they wanted us to hold on to $1,000 and the title company said, our legal department will not allow us to hold on to this deposit of $1,000. So title company is a little different and it's always going to be case by case of how it's presented in there. Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for that, Bana. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and talking about this, I enjoyed really, Dani. You are such a great instructor. I'm enjoying it, and I will be attending every Twilight session. Because
Thank
you
you,
know
Bana.
what, everyone, every day you have something new. No one knows everything, guys. We keep learning.
Always be
So-
learning based, guys. Yeah, I
Yes.
can't emphasize that enough. And I'm not saying I don't know everything, I mean, I'm constantly learning. And so that's why I rely on my peers to be able to pick their brain when it comes to certain things, and so and things are always changing also. So as you guys
100%.
know, our contracts change, our requests for repairs change, a lot of our disclosures change. You have to always be on the know of those, okay? Always. So going back to this form here, because I want to make sure we stay within our timeline. If we were to do a 29-day, or you can always state, hey, we're not giving you 29 days, but you'll have till the 15th of February. You can do that. You would not put the 29 days here. You would just click this box and then put in the date that you mutually agree to, that they said they will be out by a specific time or by 6 p.m. Okay. Now, consideration. This is where it gets into, are you letting them stay in the home for free of charge? Or are you going to charge them a per diem? Now, a few years back, when it was more of a buyer's market, we would be able to get away with charging $35, $60, $100 a day. whatever it may be on the case, right? Right now, with being a seller heavy, a lot of people are getting for free. Now, this is a little secret I'm going to teach you guys because I do not like blanks on contracts. You see here, if I tried to type in the word 0, I'm typing, nothing is happening, right?
Mhm.
Little secret, hit the space bar as you're right here. Hit the space bar, it went blue. Now you can type in 0 per day.
Okay.
And then you put 0 per day.
Well,
Right.
Danny, back on that calendar days, would you want to put NA calendar days or not?
Right here,
No,
if you were, yeah, if
yeah.
you were gonna do 29, you mean? Right,
no,
right
if you're
here?
gonna actually choose a date like you did,
Uh-huh.
back where the 29 is, are you wanting to put NA?
You can, yes, absolutely. And when you do, yeah, some areas will let you put in NA. And if they don't, then you can hit the space bar and
Space bar,
it'll allow
okay.
you to be, it'll go blue like this and it'll allow you. And the reason why I bring this up is because I don't like blanks on a contract, especially when you're talking about monetary disclosures, right? You don't want there to be any room for misunderstandings or miscommunication whatsoever. So if every line is filled out, then there won't be any really reason why they would be able to take you to mediation or arbitration because, hey, every line was completely filled out of what this is. So
And
you
you
hit
signed
the
it.
space bar and you type in 0.
Does it let you, where you put 0, does it let you put 0.00, like? Yeah,
Only when I hit the space bar.
okay,
Because you see how that calculator popped up?
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
what it makes you do the calculation.
okay, because, yeah,
Yeah.
I think I put 0. I didn't know about the space bar to write 0.
Nobody does. It's a little secret that I have that I want to share with you guys because I'm seeing a lot of these. And as Sandy knows, you know, as being her coach, I'm a stickler. I want every box checked. I want every line filled out because it makes it crystal clear everybody's on the same page with
Yeah.
all of that. Okay. So I do put that in there. Delivery of possession fee. Now, this is where you could try to say, hey, we want $500 to be held at the escrow. Escrow will probably tell you, majority of them, that they cannot hold on to these fees. Okay. Now you can try it because each escrow company is different. So you never know. Utilities. Seller agrees to pay for all utilities and services and the following charges. So why is that important? What if they have something special? What if they say, hey, I have a landscaper and I've paid up for him for the following month, right? Put it in there, you guys. Landscaping to be paid through the end of the month or whatever it is. Don't leave room for misinterpretation.
Or
It's-
would that include cable, like if they charged up renting movies and stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I mean, it is classified under utilities, but if you want to be specific about that, if you know that there's something, a water softener system that's leased, who knows, right? I mean, you just want to make sure that if there is anything, a security system, something along those lines that you know that they're paying services for because it was on their disclosures, it is made clear up front that you are protecting your buyers to the fact that they can't come back and say, hey, well, you got to pay for this, that, and all the other. Okay. Now, super, super important, you guys. I keep seeing this and it's missed quite a bit. Keys and other items included. This is super important. Seller shall provide keys and other items necessary to access the property as required in the agreement at close of escrow, or if checked, at the end of the term of the seller license to remain in possession. So technically, okay, if you are representing the seller, you want this checked, right? You don't want
Yes.
to have to give the keys to the buyer at the close of escrow, and then they got a set of keys for 29 days while your seller's still in the house, right? So you want to make sure that that is there, that when are you actually getting keys to the property, the garage door openers, all of that. Just make sure that everything is completely made crystal clear. If there's any other terms or conditions or anything, and it's always going to be a case by case. Each scenario is always going to be different, but I'm seeing this so often, and a lot of these are not being filled out completely.
So
So I
Dani,
want,
where you have utilities, if those, I mean, that's blank, right? Are you gonna want to write something in there like NA, so it's not blank? Because I know
No.
that,
no, do not write
Or-
NA in there. No, because
Because-
what this states, the only thing
Yeah.
you want to add in here is if you're adding something besides utilities,
right,
right?
okay,
If you
Mhm.
put NA, then you're saying, hey, this does not apply. And no, we want that to apply. We want to make sure that the seller is paying for the utilities while they are still in that home.
right,
Would
okay.
you also add under no exceptions?
I have not. I've
Okay.
just always made it's crystal clear, because you're kind of reiterating the purpose of this form.
Okay.
Is you're already stating that this is no exceptions. This is what you're agreeing to.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
All right. Let me think. Okay. Any questions about sellers in possession? Because this is a very common thing that is happening right now when you're going and writing offers on these homes.
So I just want to be clear then. So they get the 29-day rent back, the SIP, free. And then if they stay anywhere beyond that, that's when they become tenants, and that's when the fees start to apply.
Yes and no. Fees may
Okay.
not apply. I mean, they could be tenants and not charge anything. The difference is between 29 days or more.
And you
Okay,
can actually
right.
charge them within that 29 days or less.
You
If-
absolutely
You
can.
could,
But
right,
it's different market right now, so.
Absolutely. I mean,
Right.
I've written seller in possession forms where, they said if a seller wanted to stay, well, they had to pay $85 a day, $100 a day. You
Mhm.
know, I mean, it all depends on your market, and it
Mhm.
depends on the needs of both sides, right?
right,
Because let's say, for example, that maybe the buyer is willing to give you 29 days, but the buyer now has to pay an extra per diem on their side to be able to stay where they're staying at. Maybe their lease was up and now their landlord is charging them an extra amount of dollars to be able to stay where they're at, right?
Mhm.
So there's
Mhm.
always every situation is going to be different, that you have to sit back and go, okay, what is going to benefit the buyer and the seller to where we can make it a mutual win-win for both sides.
And
Okay.
it's just, I mean, it's just a way to strengthen your offer too, at times.
Mhm.
The buyers or the sellers like, oh yeah, maybe I could use a rent back, type of thing.
Yeah.
That makes it easier for them. And so it makes your offer stronger.
And I love that you said that, Sandy. So to piggyback off of that, right? You go to show a home and you see that they've got a lot of furniture. They haven't even started packing, right? But yet you go into MLS and they're not asking for a rent back, right? So wouldn't it make your offer a little bit stronger if you called up that listing agent and said, hey, you know, we're willing to let them stay in the house for an extra 14 days free of charge to help them to move a little smoothly. Would that help strengthen our offer just a little bit more? Right? So it's not always because it's a seller need. It may be more because it's a matter of convenience and you want to just be that nice guy that's going to help to make it a little more convenient, because we all know that moving is a very stressful thing, right? So take all of that into consideration when you go and view these homes and you decide that you want to put an offer into them. You as an agent always have to think outside the box. We always have to be creative on how we can make our offer just a little bit better than the other guy.
Especially when they're moving out of state. It can benefit too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Krista, you have anything you want to piggyback on any of that?
No, that was good. You know, actually, I was listening. We're doing some work at the new house, but I don't know who asked about the security deposit. So those were great questions. And then also just going over maintaining the property. As she said, you are going to receive the property as the way you put your offer in. But yeah, so love this class, Dani. It's a nice refresher because this is exactly, I lost a deal. It was a $2.2 million deal because of a rent back. And other things too, but I can't get into it. And so they were saying they wanted 60 days rent back, and then they decided that they wanted 100 days rent back. So it's a whole story, but this is common right now.
Yeah, and it is very common. And so you guys may go, okay, you know, hey, you need an extra 100 days to move out of the house. Not a problem. Although keep in mind, now you opened up a whole nother possible can of worms, because your offer is a primary residence offer. Right? So that lender has the right to audit and make sure that you're actually occupying that home within time specified. And we can't hide it from the lender, guys, because it's right on the contract. They see it right then and there. Is it a SIP or is it an RLAS? And the lender's going to know right then and there, hey, this is the difference.
Yeah, if you're unsure too, really reach out to your lenders. If you're really unsure, do not hesitate. Even if you feel like it's a stupid question or you asked it like 10 minutes ago, keep on asking so you are very clear. And like Dani keeps saying, to protect your clients,
That's right. Because at the end of the day, you guys, if you don't bring these information to your buyers in the forefront and they say, oh yeah, no, I'll give them 120 days, whatever they need, right? And you don't have that conversation, and then the lender by any chance does an audit. They were that one file that got pulled to do an audit and come to find out that they're not occupying the home within specified, and that lender goes back to that buyer. Who do you think that buyer is going to go back to?
Yep.
But how often do they audit? You say that does it happen all the time? Has it ever happened to you? Or, I mean, I'm just kind of curious.
Great question. No, it's never happened to me. But it does happen, Robert. It does happen. And each lender is different. You know, it also depends on the type of loan that they are doing. So each lender has different guidelines. Each lender is different. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys, as you all know, the nightmare that I'm in on my listing, right? Remember I told you that the buyer tried to force us to close and said,
Yes.
oh, it's okay. They could just rent it back for a year if they needed to. And I went, wow, well, how is that going to work with the lender? You know what that agent told me? Well, that's between them and the lender.
Oh, well, that was
And
nice.
I said,
Yeah.
no, that's not between them and the lender. It is because we are at the foremost. We are hired to have our clients' best interests under all circumstances. We handle our clients with the utmost care, honest, integrity, and fiduciary agreement. That means that we always have to have not only our clients, but the other sides too, right? Because it's not all about just our side. It's always about how do we make it a win-win, right? And so we always have to take all of these situations into consideration and say, okay, how can we make this a win-win? And so when these seller in possessions, we have to be very familiar and have to know the circumstances in order to make your offer just a little bit stronger and a little bit better for somebody else. I've offered rent back when there was even no need to offer rent back. But yet we won the offer because they said, wow, the seller really liked that you and your clients were thinking of them and their kids and not having to scramble packing up their house and moving out of state, right? So we did that just to sweeten our deal just a little bit to benefit them. So there's always ways to think of how to make it a more aggressive and competitive offer. We are creative all day long, but we stay legal. Absolutely. And that's our job as your coaches, is to help you to make sure that you are not a liability to your business and we keep you and our brokers out of court.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
I just want to say real quick, today at the Antique office, I was covering the front desk and there was a person that came in and I thought at first he was telling me he was a title company, right? And that he had a check. So here I've been trying to process these closings. So that's what I'm thinking in my head. And then luckily Barbara was there. And so I took the envelope to Barbara and I said, he's wanting to turn in a check. So she came out immediately and it was surprising to her that the agent, he showed her that the agent text him and said to bring his check that's supposed to go to the title company to the office. And she's like, no, we cannot take that. And I said, I was a little confused about who he was at first. Sorry. She said, I don't know how many times I've said this. I said, I know. So she said, I'm gonna have to talk about it again.
Yeah. And so that's really great, you guys, because at the end of the day, there's certain liabilities that we have to stay within our lane. And no, we do not take the earnest money deposits, any monies whatsoever from our clients to the title companies. They can very easily wire the funds. And since COVID, the title companies have made it so easy now that I've worked with several of them recently where they just take pictures of people's checks and they deposit them like that. Just like, you can mobile deposit, right? The title companies are now advancing to that also, right? So we can never take deposits and deliver them for our clients. You have to tell your clients, hey, you need to make arrangements. You should be excited. You should be dancing your way down to that title company within 24 hours. I know it says 3 days, but come on, guys, within 24 hours, because until
Dani,
that
interesting.
until that deposit is in the title, you technically aren't really in contract because you didn't fulfill your terms, right?
Right.
So
right.
don't wait those time. Don't tell them you got 3 days. I tell my clients that the moment I call you, you're at the title company that next day. Absolutely.
Well,
Dani, can you tell me more about the picture and the deposit? It's so interesting because sometimes this will, strengthen our offer. How this happened, how the title company would accept like the picture. Can you explain that for me?
Yeah. So like with my Chase mobile, my Chase banking, I can take a picture of my checks and it goes into my deposit and I don't have to take the check to the Chase. Well, the title companies have now come up with an app called Zoom Cam, I think it is. And they literally they send them the link. It has to come from the title company, guys. We do not forward the links. It comes directly from the title companies. That falls in line with the wire fraud advisory that we review with our clients, that we at no time, or our brokers, or anybody, lenders, will ever tell you this is where you wire. It comes directly from the title company. The title companies will send them the link to download a mobile app, and they take a picture of their check, and they can do their earnest money deposit that way.
Do all the
Wow,
title
amazing.
companies do that?
majority of them, but no, not all of them are going that way. Now they all do wire transfers.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely. But the Zoom kind of saves the people from having to pay the wire transfer fee, right? I think it's 25 to 30 bucks from your bank, right? But at the end of the day, whatever's going to get that money to the title company the fastest. But no, not all title companies. I know that Old Republic that I've worked with several times definitely does.
Okay.
Chicago might. And I think Doma is working towards that also.
Okay.
So a lot of them are transitioning to that just because of the times that we are in right now. So at the end of the day, just always let them know that this is the best way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dani, would you say that the Zoom is that way of doing it is as secure as the wire?
I personally have not had any issues because the link is not coming from me. It's coming directly from the title company that gives them all the same instructions like they would with the wire transfer. So I have not had any issues with the clients that I've dealt with those title companies doing the mobile apps.
When they have to be responsible for it, they care.
Yeah, absolutely. Kathy,
Dani,
you were going to say something?
Yeah, is there a maximum? I know like with my bank, there's a maximum of a check that I can deposit online. Is there a maximum with the title companies? Some of them have any of those types of restrictions?
I have not seen them just because I have not experienced any maximum. Like with my Chase Bank, I can deposit up to 25 or 50 grand, I think it is, mobilely. So I would imagine that they, knowing the market and our price range, that there wouldn't be. But like I said, each title company has their own. Is different. Yeah. So who you guys partner up with? That's a great question. I know it's 1 minute before 7. I want to respect everybody's time, but here's another great way for you guys to reach out to your title rep that you have relationships with and find out. And if that title company doesn't offer it, then talk to the other ones and see which ones do, right? Always have more than one affiliate in your pocket. Always.
Yeah, and
Raina, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
So I had one more question, just to clarify. So if we did that 24-hour, the annotation of doing it, the transfer within 24 hours, and for whatever reason it was like 25, 26 hours, 28, is that seller able to walk out of that contract?
Oh, sorry, I apologize. My dog was barking. Okay. So are you saying that does the seller, it depends. If you stated on your purchase contract that deposit is going to be in the title company within 24 hours and you failed as the buyer to perform, then yes, the seller can most definitely have the right to cancel because you did not fulfill the terms of the contract that you wrote.
But if they had grace for whatever reason, they could still keep it and say, we're going to just go ahead and go through with it. Correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just like, when we write an offer, the offer's good for 3 days, but yet if they came back on day 5 and said, hey, we're going to accept your offer, you'd still take it, right?
Right. Okay.
Right.
I just wanted
Absolutely.
to clarify.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But always keep in mind the terms in your offers, terms are very important. It's not always about price, it's price and terms. So always keep that in mind and make sure that you can fulfill those terms that you meet with. Okay. So, all right, you guys, it's 7 o'clock. I hope you found value in this tonight. If
Good
you
job,
have
Dani.
any other questions, you know that my phone is always on and that I'm always here for you all. So thank you so much for coming tonight. And we will see you guys once again for Twilight with Arthur next week.
Thank you so much, Dani.
Thanks, Dani.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Dani.
Thank you, Sandy.
Oh, you're welcome.
I like your home, Krista.
How do I stop this?
Oh, hi.
Hi. I'm like, I don't know how I stop recording.
I know. I was trying.